Hey, what's up guys, you got Gypsy and I'm back here today with another Borderlands 3 build video, and in this one I'm going to be showcasing my Eternal Pet build and show you guys how you can, when played correctly, put out over 288% weapon damage with this build. So jumping into it, initially I had my doubts about pet builds. I'd read a lot online and listened to others talk about how unviable the playstyle was in Mayhem 3. So when I started to create this build about a week or so ago, I definitely had my concerns. But what I ended up with might just be my favorite build yet. Also, with the upcoming patch, which is going to increase the health and viability of Flak's pets to let them scale better in the Mayhem modes, it's never really been a better time to start exploring the options that Flak pet builds have. So the aim of this build in particular is for Flak's pet of choice to pull as much of the aggro as it can in combat off of Flak, which is going to take the pressure off Flak and has actually incredible synergy with many of the DPS skills found in the Stalker tree. So this is going to be achieved by using a Red Fang class mod, which causes Flak's pet to taunt enemies after Gamma Burst is activated. When you couple this with the many health regen and health sharing skills found in both trees, you end up with a build that is capable of putting out massive DPS while also never going down in most mob situations. So like I mentioned, this build is going to dive into both the Stalker and the Master tree, so we're going to kick it off with the Stalker tree. So self-repairing system here is a no-brainer, just to start off with. It's going to increase Flak's maximum health, giving him health regen, and this is going to synergize perfectly with all my BFFs, which is going to allow Flak's pet to receive 100% of the health regen that Flak receives. This is also obviously benefiting any allies if you're playing co-op as well. So, because self-repairing systems health regen is tick-based, it's based off a percentage of max health. Any form of health stacking that Flak can receive will make for greater overall health regen for your pet, and that's pretty important. Next up, the choice here between Eager to Impress and Furious Attack all comes down to personal preference. For me personally, I like to invest in both, so I get a bit of both from both skills. I like the attack buff that Furious Attack gets. It's very easy to stack this up, and Eager to Impress, having that cooldown time on Gamma Burst every time you get a kill is really nice. I find that it's better to mix a little bit in both rather than just maxing out one and not being able to invest any in the other. But that's going to bring us down here to Lick the Wounds, which is a really nice skill to have in endgame Mayhem content. Being able to be revived by your tanky pet is really useful in the Slaughter Shaft, for example, in Proving Grounds. Not that you tend to go down in Proving Grounds, but then we get to the really interesting DPS skills of the Stalker tree. We've got Turntail and Run, which is going to give Flak an additional 0.9% health regen while moving. And this is also going to be received by our pet thanks to all my BFFs, but more significantly the 25% damage boost while standing still. So this, as well as Hidden Machine, the Fast and the Furious, and the Power Inside, all heavily appreciate the ability of our pet to draw aggro, as you get the most out of these skills when Flak is at full health, standing still and not being targeted. And this is really where the class mod comes into play, because its ability to allow the pet to draw the aggro is going to proc Hidden Machine. It's going to benefit the Fast and the Furious because we're not going to be taking damage, we're going to be above full health. It's going to be benefiting Turntail and Run because chances are we can stand still whilst our pet is drawing the aggro and just fire off shots. And it's going to be benefiting the Power Inside because again we're going to be staying nice and healthy with this build. So you can see here these DPS skills are some of my favorites that Flak has to offer, and this kind of build really appreciates the class mod's ability to just deter all aggro from Flak onto the pet and really make the most out of these really impressive skills. Now we're going to move over to the Master tree, and this is where the pet aspect of the build begins to shine. So Persistence Hunter Persistence Hunter offers a nice damage boost, and before we jump into that, I'm just going to mention Gamma Burst here. Gamma Burst is obviously the action skill of choice, buffing our pet, increasing him in size, and allowing our pet to teleport through the rift, which is really useful in just moving the aggro away from Flak, moving him further around the battlefield. and starting off all the buffs that go along with Gamma Burst. As far as pets go, I like to go with the Great Horn Skag. I do sometimes alternate between the Great Horn Skag and the Iridian Skag, depending on whether I'm making use of the singularity effect that the Iridian Skag can pull off. I've got a pretty interesting build idea around the singularity plus some AoE damage, some different launches and stuff, but I'm gonna have to put some more work into that. But for the moment I've been using the Great Horn Skag, just the damage output that it can provide flak, the damage buff with the Barbaric Yop buff is really useful. So that nice 13% and 26% damage buff you see there is really nice there for flak. So first up we have Persistence Hunter here, and this is going to offer us a nice damage boost and an extension of the duration of Gamma Burst, which is really going to work well along with Empathic Rage, which is an augment that gives us a longer, gives us a 20% damage boost, and this is going to be boosted by Persistence Hunter, the duration that is. Having that nice 20% is just really useful while Gamma Burst is up, and boosting that by 45%, the duration of Gamma Burst is going to allow us to maintain that 20% for longer. Ferocity here, it's a skill that we have to invest in really, because Go for the Eyes is just not the most viable in my opinion. We're not using the pet for insane damage off its melee attacks, we're more so using it for health tanking, health restoration for flak, and aggro deterrence. So Ferocity is nice, whereas Go for the Eyes is a bit of a wasted investment at this point in my opinion. But that's investing in that is going to open up the second tier to us, and this is where it's gonna get really interesting here. So at this point we're going to jump into Who Rescued Who, and this is a fantastic skill. This is pretty big. We're going to be putting out consistently high damage with this build, and this is going to lead to our pet staying healthy in strong mobbing situations. It's going to mean that flak heals 2% of our max health per second whenever our pet deals damage, and thanks to all my BFFs I should say, this means that our pet is also going to be receiving that additional 2% health regen. To complement this, I use the Atomic Aroma as my second augment of choice, not so much for the damage that it does, but for the fact that it's reliable in making contact with enemies, which actually triggers the health regen of Who Rescued Who. It also helps stacking Frenzy stacks, which is really important to getting that nice 40% damage buff from Frenzy over here. So yeah, this augment here, whilst it's not like great in terms of damage, it's reliable in terms of proccing Who Rescued Who and Frenzy. So more importantly though, it's the ability for flak to heal the pet through dealing damage. So 5% of damage is quite considerable when you think about how much damage we're putting out with our weapons at this point in the game. And all the damage buffs we do have, that's going to be providing the pet with a lot of health regen in conjunction with all the other different buffs we have to health for the pet. A couple of points into He Bites isn't bad from the class mod. It's a nice 10% damage reflected from the class mod, which is useful. Definitely nice to have that 10% in areas like the Slaughter Shaft, where you're getting bombarded from all angles. It's not like massively significant, but it's certainly better than nothing. It's certainly better than like points into Go for the Eyes, for example. Next we're going to move down into Mutated Defenses, and this is a really nice skill. It's going to grant the pet extra damage resistance while at low health, and a burst of health regen, which can be pretty crucial against the stronger endgame mobs, like I mentioned in the Slaughter Shaft. And rounding out the Master Tree we have Barbaric Yop and Pack Tactics. Now this was recently buffed, Barbaric Yop. The pet bonuses increased massively. I think it used to cap out at 100%, but now it's able to cap out at 200%, and then you can actually get a different class mod which is going to buff that further. But for this build, 160% is a really nice buff to our damage buff that the Great Horn Skag provides. The reason I don't max this out and go to 5 out of 5 is actually the additional 1% damage you'd get by investing in this, as opposed to investing another point in Pack Tactics, is offset by losing the 5% health you gain in flak and his pet by investing another point in Pack Tactics. So that's why I opt to go for 2 points into this and only 4 into Barbaric Yob. This is really nice, giving us an extra 10% health stack overall on Flak and his pet, which again is going to be a nice health stack, and that's going to mean that we are regenerating more health per second, which is going to be regenerating the pet more health per second, and that's a nice 10% damage buff. So as you can see, like, there's a lot of DPS, there's a lot of healing, and this really does lead to a build that rarely ever goes down. Unless you're in, just an insane mobbing situation, like in the Slaughter Shaft, facing a ton of rocket wielding badasses, and they manage to somehow get your pet down. So it's a really fun build, and we're going to move on to the gear choices here. Now, as far as gear goes, the only essential piece of gear you'll need for this build to work effectively is the Red Fang class mod, like I mentioned earlier, and you really do need this, as it's the cornerstone of the build. It's how the build functions as far as drawing aggro and Flak taking advantage of that. You can get a whole bunch of different stat combinations on this. I actually got lucky and ended up getting the weapon damage buff of 25%, which is pretty significant, as well as more health stacking and more health regen, which again is going to be shared with the pet because of all my BFFs. I have got a few more of these Red Fangs, but this is definitely the best stat spread up there. So if you guys do want to find one of these, definitely look out for a similar stat roll to these. I think getting health regen or weapon damage, if you can, is really going to help you out, but it's definitely the taunting effect of this class mod that is what you're looking for. Then we have some of you guys might know from my previous video, I'm a big fan of the stopgap shield. The invincibility window that it provides on break can be really important, especially in the Slaughter Shaft and other difficult endgame areas, and can really allow you to trade damage that would otherwise kill you with a different kind of shield, such as like badass rockets from those badass enemies. I can also give you the freedom to revive your pet if it somehow goes down and you don't have your Gamma Burst active. But most of the time your pet should never be going down anyway, so it's definitely a nice get out of jail free card in situations where you really just do need to trade damage, or you need to escape a really intense situation. Having that invincibility window, I've found, is a lot of fun. And this actually anointed version gives me +8 health, +8% health, and a nice 17% resistance on the last damage we took, as well as a shield when we crouch. I'm actually going to be using this on my Amara character when I level her up. It's going to be a lot of fun to use that nice anointed ability, but for all the anointed shields that I have got, I've only got 2, and they've both been stopgaps. This is my rack attack one, so that's pretty crazy. I think, what are the chances of that? But then as far as relics go, I'm using the same artifact that I showcased in my rack build. This is going to give me 18% max health after killing an enemy, so nice health restoration, which again would be applied to my pet from all my BFFs, and that's a pretty sizable health increase, health regen right there. 18% of my max health plus all the other health regen that's going on is going to be really, really nice for the pet there. The action skill cooldown rate is going to benefit the way Gamma Burst comes back sooner, obviously, and the 33% area of effect damage is going to benefit the damage output of Gamma Burst, again helping with the regen. It's also going to be improving the damage from grenades, and the grenades that I'm opting to run with is of course the recurring hex, and I know these are hard to come by. Some of you guys may not have found these yet. I did actually farm the red jabber for about 3 or 4 hours to find this recurring hex, and this is one of, if not the best roll you can get on the recurring hex. Funnily enough, I did find I was farming Tyrene actually, and on the 4th run I got a recurring cryo hex, which is just insane. So I'm rocking 2 hexes, and the cryo hex actually synergizes amazingly with this artifact here, as it buffs the efficiency of cryo damage and gives me a bonus damage versus frozen targets. So I like to cycle between both recurring hexes, but the radiation is a ton of fun to use, as is the cryo. So that is going to be the build. In terms of weapons, you've got a lot of flexibility with weapons. I like to use my Nighthawk in conjunction with my relic. It's just a very reliable gun. This weapon here is a really slept on. I think I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, but I really enjoy using this weapon. The splash damage is huge on this weapon, and it's also boosted by the area of effect damage buff on my artifact. It's really useful for getting a lot of health back on my pet. It's going to deal a lot of damage, and all the splash damage that it deals is going to, I think, proc, like, it's going to end up affecting a lot of enemies if you're in highly dense mob situations, so that's going to be more health for the pet. And the corrosive plus incendiary sort of effect of this weapon means that it can chew through armor pretty well as flesh targets, so you're not having to switch between weapons. I just really like this weapon. It also has the crazy anointed effect of being boosted by 100% damage after using an action skill end, so very nice weapon here. I don't really tend to use the Cutsman all that much, but I do use it versus anointed enemies. It is like my anointed militant slayer. I've realized how amazing it is versus anointed militants, mainly for that insane dot damage you see there, 3,982 per second. So really nice to take down those pesky anointed militants, which can tank through a lot of hits. Very frustrating to face. I think they're going to get nerfed soon. And then lastly, I've been using the Hive. Again, this is just a lot of fun to use when you're, especially in the circle, the slaughter shaft, when you're running around, your pet's tanking all the aggro, you throw a few of these out while Gamma Burst is up, and then you just watch it melt everything. So it's a lot of fun to use. I cycle between a whole bunch of different weapons. I've got my Lucian's Call, my different crossroads, but for the most part, I'm using stuff like this weapon actually, which I got recently in the Proving Grounds. And I sort of mix it up. This build isn't too weapon reliant, it's really just what works for you. But yeah, there's a lot of different options here, and mainly it's just the class mod. A really nice shield. You could also use something like the Transformer or the Backham, but find yourself a really nice relic which is going to buff your damage, maybe give you some more lifesteal for your pet, and a really top tier grenade like the Hex or the Firestorm, and you'll be set. So I'm going to pause the video here and we're going to jump into some gameplay, and I'll show you guys how the build functions in practice. Alright guys, so now we're going to jump into some gameplay of the build, see how it works in action. And I've just shown you guys here, we are in Mayhem 3, we're going to be doing the Proving Grounds Trial of Fervor. You can see the list of debuffs that I've got on for the Mayhem mode, and I've also thrown up my Guardian rank if you guys are curious about that. I'm also going to throw up some information about how we can get 288% bonus weapon damage. So if you guys are keen, pause the video and check that out. Otherwise, I'm going to let the gameplay speak for itself. I'm going to be making my way through the Proving Grounds, not doing it, not trying to do it like a fast run or anything, just showing you guys how the build functions versus some pretty strong anointed enemies and other badasses. And yeah, hopefully you guys get a feel for it and you did enjoy the build. If you did, let me know what you guys thought in the comments, and yeah, be sure to check out the gameplay for a full kind of feel of how the build functions. So subscribe if you'd like to see more of these videos, and yeah, let me know what you thought in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time.